What's up, guys? Liquid Hungrybox here. Gonna do a quick video today because obviously there's a lot of articles and a lot of media about Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, but in this case, Exclusively Games decided to write an article about Melee with the following headline: Super Smash, it's time for Melee players to move on. And you know, you don't even have to click into it to know what the feeling of the article is going to be. But I decided to give it a chance because how often you get to see a sort of headline about Melee. And I'm going to go ahead and do my best to point out why there's so many things that are wrong with this article. Compliments of Luke Archer, who, if his goal was to get a lot of people to read it, congrats, you did a good goal. He got us the clickbait, but got a nice picture of FD here in the front. So let me just take a quick peek. You never know. Let's see what this says. Super Smash Bros. Melee was released in late 2001, considered to be one of the greatest games ever released for the GameCube. A sentiment that I would personally agree with. Okay, trying to get on our good side. Melee is a fantastic game all around, and it's no surprise that it is as beloved as it is. Had it not been as successful as it was, it's very possible that the Super Smash Bros. Series could have ended there, but due to high sales figures and an incredibly passionate community, the series has continued to this day. So, he's remarking on the good points of the game, the milestones that it made. One of these games stood out among the rest of them, being on the series, with a community more passionate than any other entry. That game is, of course, Melee. It still remains as popular as it was back in the day. And then he just flips it. And I think it's about time that everyone moved on from Melee. So here you are, praising the game, one of the greatest games in the series, one of the greatest games ever made, timeless. It was the reason Smash exists. And now you're like, alright, but enough of that. Anyways, make no mistake, I think Melee is a great game, yada yada. It's time to move on, folks. I don't think that people should just stop playing it entirely, but I do think it's time for Melee super fans to stop acting like Melee is the only Smash game that matters and stop insisting that the pro gaming community bend over backwards to accommodate them playing an 18-year-old game, which has had, in my opinion, definitively better games released in its series since then. What my friend Luke here doesn't realize is that we're not forcing people to play only Melee. We're not acting like Melee is the only Smash games that matters. In fact, many of the top Melee players actually participate in Ultimate and its tournaments, and they stream it, and they support it, and they actively participate in their community. It's not like we believe Melee is the only game. Insisting that the pro gaming community bend over backwards to accommodate them playing an 18-year-old game. Come on, man. Accommodation is one thing. It sort of depends on the choice words that you use. Is Melee played, on CRTs traditionally? Yes. There's alternatives to it as well. If you're referring to the rule set, both Melee and Ultimate, and hell, every Smash game that's competitive have a rule set. Competition is defined by rules. It's sort of a boundary of what is and isn't allowed that sort of promotes skill over RNG, promotes people to actually showcase who the best is in a certain game rather than relying on, some weird factors like a stage transformation or items. These rules and these sort of accommodations are actually more universal than you think. So already, when I started reading this article, it was already off to a really bad start. At a competitive level, Melee is a very deep game with tons of complex high-level mechanics, most of which would involve abusing glitches that probably would have been patched out as soon as they were discovered had the GameCube had any method to patch games. Because only certain characters can take advantage of these glitches to full extent, competitive Melee has very few characters being used in tournament matches. You'll generally see the same 3 or 6 or so characters, because the gap between the upper tiers and the lower tiers is so huge. In my opinion, this has caused the game to be stagnant. And of course, like any good clickbait article, he has now here a great image of all the Fox McClouds on the Super Smash Bros. Melee disc on Final Destination, which of course is an overplayed, overused meme. Fox only, Final Destination, no items. It's a thing. So, yeah, this is wrong. This is wrong. There's more than 3 to 6 or so characters being represented even at the highest echelon of Melee. And if you don't believe me, allow me. Smash Summit 8 results. We do one quick search on Wikipedia. You ready for this? These were the players that were invited to the tournament, based upon merits, based upon high resultant placings. Myself playing Puff, that's 1. Leffen playing Sheik, or Fox, that's 2. Plut playing Sheik and Fox, that's 3 characters. Mango playing Falco and Fox, that's 4. Zane playing Marth, that's 5. Alms playing Yoshi, that's 6. Axe playing Pikachu, 7. Esther J playing Falcon, 8. Crowdfunded players, including Triff, who is top 15 in the world with Peach. Also Ginger, IBW, and Nun. So that's 9 characters represented right there. And not to mention the fact that, you know who won this entire tournament? A Pikachu player. You know who I lost to? A Yoshi player. There's more than 6 characters in this game, right? Melee is not going to have as many characters as Ultimate. Obviously not. It's 26 to 75, whatever I want to call it. And yes, Ultimate is a way more balanced game. There's a lot more viability across the cast. But even if your concept of there only being these 3 to 6 characters, which is not true at all, was your argument for not playing a game, what if the game still was really, really good, you know? There's about 10 to 12 characters, I would say, that can really make actual amazing upsets and even deep bracket runs in Melee. Yeah, the game's been out 18 to 19 years, so of course the meta is pretty evolved at this point. But that does not mean by any means that we've, finished discovering everything that characters can do. So I think this is just a very uneducated opinion right here. Most of the characters aren't used, most of the stages are banned, and in the end, most matches are just the same thing over and over. Yeah, this is complete bullshit. The Melee matches and diversity is second to none. Most of the stages are banned. I wonder what other game we have that. And this guy's acting like we don't ban 95% of the stages in Ultimate for the same reason. We enjoy watching a competitive and well-based foundational esport that we need these sort of limitations on. It's not exclusive to Melee. So you rarely, if ever, see anything surprising unless a player makes a mistake. Does it make the game bad? Of course not, but it does make it incredibly boring to watch. Look, I don't know if this guy is just talking about watching my matches, which obviously aren't as fast-paced, or referring to the entirety of Melee as boring matches. You know, if you're gonna tell me that Axe versus Mango is boring to watch, or Leffen versus Wizzy, I don't know. This is just your own taste. This is not an overarching generalized statement. This is a complete opinion and does not represent what people actually think. Again, if he's referring to my matches specifically, different argument. And maybe because, I've achieved rank 1, maybe that's what's on his mind, but otherwise, like, come on, man. And we've barely even touched the surface of this article so far. Oh my god. Unfortunately, the biggest problem isn't the game itself, but the community. Melee's competitive community continued on after its sequel's release. In fact, Melee's competitive community even went as so far to create a mod of Brawl called Project M that existed for no other purpose than to gut any of the undesirable mechanics from Brawl and make the gameplay as close to Melee as possible. They hacked the game to make it more like the one that they liked, on top of still playing the one they liked in the first place. Yeah. You know why PM existed? Because Melee didn't get a sequel. Nintendo released Melee, and then Nintendo released a new game called Brawl. Brawl got sequels. Brawl got Smash 4 and then Ultimate. Melee has not had a true sequel. If you look at the gameplay of Melee, and the physics that are described in the game, and the movement and the options that you have, is it Smash? Yes. There's percentages. There's platform-based fighting. There's Nintendo licensed characters. But if I'm being honest, apart from the basics like shielding and, using proper mechanics, neutral, punish spacing, like most fighting games, apart from that, Melee is so wildly different from any of the other Smash titles that this, I think, is not a good comparison to make, or reasoning. PM was made, and guess what? PM for a time was a huge hit. In fact, I believe it was Apex 2014 where PM was the most entered game. I think Melee had about 280 entrants or so. I could be wrong. I think maybe Brawl had some more, and then PM had the most entrants. I could be wrong. I'm forgetting what the time frame of Smash 4's release was, but I know that for a little bit, PM was a massively popular game both in the casual and competitive community. Because guess what? They took Brawl and made it into a true Melee sequel. Because Brawl was full of errors. Brawl had tripping. Brawl had characters like Meta Knight and Ice Climbers that sort of created this meta that was almost to a point unplayable. And of course, there's a lot of discussions you can have about that. But we weren't forcing everyone like, hey, stop playing Brawl, never play Brawl again. We just took a game and said, what if we had a chance to have a sequel? What would it be like? And I think the PM community made an incredible mod. In fact, PM is considered by many to be the greatest fighting game mod ever made. So, to the point where Nintendo actually had to, I believe, do a cease and desist because of how popular it was getting. So if that's not success for a mod, then I don't know what it is. I mean, yeah, it got shut down and eventually canceled, but they did a good-ass job on it. Otherwise, it wouldn't have gotten Nintendo's attention. While the rest of the competitive gaming community at this point was moving on to new games, the Melee community insisted that their game was here to stay. Special accommodations. Melee players insisted on only playing on CRT TVs because the minuscule input lag on HD TVs was completely unacceptable for them, even though every other pro gaming scene just dealt with it. So tournament organizers were forced to lug around big old CRTs from the community, and due to the declining need for CRTs, it can occasionally be hard to find for them. Even though every other pro gaming scene just dealt with it, every other pro gaming scene had games that were meant to be played on gaming monitors with HDMI. They're not gonna complain about it because their game happens to be the standard for what monitors need to be played on. Melee doesn't have that. It was made for CRTs, so we're playing it on CRTs because it feels better. It's lagless. It's analog. I don't know how else to describe it. You have a game where minuscule 1/60th of a second reactions can determine an entire set's outcome. Yeah, you're gonna want to play on the most equalized playing ground, which is the intended form of visual display the game was intended for. Like, use your head a little bit here, man. I'm always willing to have, fair discussions about this, but why would you just throw this like that and not think about why we actually play on CRTs? Not to mention the fact that there are alternatives. I'm an ambassador for Eon adapters, which allow Melee from GameCube to be played on beautiful displays, almost basically lagless. If you ask me, I play tournaments on both those monitors and on CRTs, and I've had, in some cases, CRTs, they can be wildly different, right? Many different developers. Sometimes the CRTs are very old and they have fading colors. And to me, when I play on a good adapter, I don't mind playing any tournament on them. I can play Evo, Genesis, Big House monitors. I wouldn't mind for a second. And that's me. I guess people are different, but it's not like there aren't alternatives. I think the Melee community's problem, if perfectly demands, I think that word describes, which word is that? The Melee community demands that all their needs be followed exactly. Things must be done a certain way. Everything that's played on CRT TVs, only GameCube controllers are allowed. Is there another way to play Melee? What? What do we allow modified box controllers for people who have defects in their hands and wrists? This is so weird. It's like saying, oh, if you want to drive a car, only rubber tires are allowed. What fucking alternative is there? It's a GameCube game. Only certain stages are allowed. Yes, also in Brawl, Smash 4, PM, Smash Ultimate, 64. Because we need those limitations. Smash games other than Melee should not be considered to be competitively as serious as Melee and so on. Complete bullshit. I'm not sure where he's getting this from. I feel like this is a guy who's gotten some loud opinions from the past, put him here, and expect them to still be relevant. This is all despite the fact that most of the fighting community as a whole does not respect nor consider Smash to be the fighting game at all, and many major figures in the community are kind of sick of the child's behavior the Melee community is throwing around demands as if they were more important than anyone else in the competitive gaming community. I think that this is a very old concept. I think, yes, there has been a divide between the fighting game community and the Smash community, but given the size, Smash is very different from traditional 2D fighters. It's very different. The fact any platform-based fighter is pretty fundamentally different. But I think as Smash, Melee, and Ultimate have grown as esports, I haven't seen as much animosity between both communities as there was before. Um, to me, that was a one thing, almost like a shock factor thing, where Smash grew so big, and people, and of course the FGC was like, "Why is this game getting so big?" Um, but as of now, I like this doesn't really apply at all anymore. I have yet to see. I can't recall the last time I saw an argument where the FGC is like, Smash isn't a true FGC title. Like, I don't think people think that anymore. I haven't seen anything. If there's any major figure who has brought up that argument and tried to discredit Smash as an esport or a fighting game title, please bring it to me or post it in the comments, because I haven't seen it lately. I think the biggest question here is why. Why is everyone so stuck on Melee in the first place? Why are they stuck on an 18-year-old game that was designed to be silly, random fun, instead of moving on to games like Smash Bros. 4 and Ultimate, which were designed partially with a competitive scene in mind and are considered to be really good? Other games that are played at competitive level typically move on to the newest game as long as the game isn't a total mess. But Melee players still seem to demand the center stage and often complain why they aren't invited to big game tournaments in a row anymore. Have you ever considered the fact that Melee is fundamentally different from Ultimate in Smash 4? Why do people who love orange juice so much insist on not making apple juice their favorite drink? Why not? Apple juice is perfectly fine. It's got all the updates, it's delicious, it's sweet. Why not go to it? When the game was being announced for EVO 2019, Melee found itself not being part of the main lineup of games. This caused an unreasonable amount of outrage from Melee. There were even calls to have Ultimate removed from the lineup and replaced with Melee. This right here, if this is true, that's a stupid thing. I didn't see that, but I don't agree with that. I don't think any rational person would have actually called to have Ultimate replaced with Melee. Ultimate, I think, harmoniously, if you want all the viewership and attendance, have the main Smash title always be on the Sunday slot. The main new Smash title deserves to be there because they're going to have the most people, and then have Melee be another one in the slot, because we bring viewership and attendance like that most other games could not bring. And that was the big reason, I think, why there was such outcry, because we did bring so much to these tournaments. But we weren't saying to get rid of Ultimate or any Smash, and the premier Smash title. I'm not sure where he's pulling these claims from. They're lucky that people are still running around major tournaments for the game at all. I don't know where he's going with this. There are even tournaments for games like Street Fighter 2 and Darkstalkers 3 happening now and then, but demanding that an 18-year-old game be played in the main stage, the prime time of EVO, is a very definition of entitled, in my opinion. Demand to be played on the main stage. We were on the main stage for 6 years. How is that entitled? We were simply pushing forth the status quo. The year before that, 2018, we had what? It was Smash 4 and Melee. No problem. The year before that, Smash 4 and Melee. No problem. The year before that, Smash 4 and Melee. No problem. There was no problem at all. And the sad part is that the Smash Bros. Ultimate is legitimately a good game. The Melee community are demanding that Ultimate be thrown under the bus. Who is demanding this? Because it isn't exactly like Melee. If you want to argue that newer versions of popular fighting games aren't worthy to have replaced in the previous game at EVO, Street Fighter 5 and BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, then you'd better be sure the game you're complaining about has something wrong with it. Unlike Ultimate, which is arguably a better game mechanically than Ultimate. I don't know where these arguments are coming from. Yes, many other fighting game titles, it's far easier to go from one title to the other, because while there are changes, every sequel has changes, right? You can't look at me and tell me Street Fighter 4 and Street Fighter 5 are very similar. They have a lot of changes, a lot of things people need to learn, but there's nothing like the change that was Melee to Brawl, Melee to Smash 4, Melee to Ultimate in that sequence. From Brawl to Smash 4 was a far, I believe, less turbulent transition than from Melee to Brawl. Melee to Brawl was, still to this day, the most dramatic shift in any two direct titles that were released consecutively I have ever seen of a game, especially a competitive game. And this is why I think a lot of the people are missing the mark. We appreciate Melee for a good reason. We appreciate Melee for its timelessness and the mechanics that it offers, the movement options that it offers. and the how demanding it is technically, it makes the skill gap for the game impossibly high. And I think that's why people chase perfection on it. But I will always stand by this. I do not believe Melee has ever had a true sequel. And if Nintendo was to release a Melee HD remaster, or a Melee 2, or Melee Remix on the Switch, whatever you want to call it, I guarantee you the entire community of Melee would flock right to it. Ultimate was better. Ultimate is better in terms of a sequel. It's closer. It's got a lot of the issues for Smash 4 and Brawl fixed. That's why it appealed to a lot of Melee players. But why is that a reason for us to drop such a special title, which is still so unique in so many ways? It just isn't. There's no foundational argument for it. So I don't know. Here we go. Again, this isn't saying that people should stop playing Melee or having tournaments for it at all. That's funny because you literally just said... I think that's... Oh, he's like, well, I gotta retract a little bit. I'm not trying to be a bad guy. What I'm saying is that the Melee community needs to learn to understand that the fighting game community does not revolve around them. We know it doesn't. And it never has, despite what they would like to believe. This guy just hates the Melee community. He doesn't get it. People are going to want to move on to newer and better games, and Melee is not some objectively definitive Smash game that beats all others in every way. We're not saying it does. We're saying that it's unique. The game is dated. Wine from the 1960s is dated, and it tastes good as fuck. It's had its day in the sun, and it's time to move on. The Beatles are dated. Pink Floyd is dated. The Godfather is dated. They need to stop demanding that they be included in major tournaments and stop acting like entitled children when they're not invited. And hey, Melee players, look on the bright side. Ultimate is great if you actually put Melee down for a moment and get... Oh my god, who is this guy? If you actually put Melee down for a moment and give it a shot, you might actually be surprisingly pleased with it. This guy's acting as if Melee players did not try Ultimate already. Besides, you can't play Melee forever. There are only so many working CRT TVs left in the world. Right, it's not like we haven't completely engineered and designed a perfect emulating strategy that allows us to play the game in an online 100 times better than the online offered by Ultimate. It's not like we haven't found adapters to create the game and play Melee on, flat screen gaming monitors. No. Why would we ever think about doing that? Bro, this is... Yeah. By far, one of the most unfounded, unresearched, opinionated articles I've ever seen about a game which is, in my eyes and the eyes of many people, a masterpiece, a game that's respected by not only Melee players, but the Ultimate community as well. A game that wants to exist harmoniously in a community that right now won't try to throw other communities under the bus. We appreciate the strides made by Ultimate. We appreciate what the game has offered. We appreciate Nintendo finally embracing, at least for a little bit, the competitive scene and offering circuits and offering ways to highlight and celebrate competitions for this game. What we don't appreciate is these overarching and completely biased assumptions about the Melee community. One person's words or actions do not represent an entire community. And I really, really do think that if you're going to ask me why we haven't moved on from Melee, it's because there's nothing quite like Melee. We don't have a sequel to the game. We have this very timeless, perfected craft that was made in 2001. And if you can go ahead and list off to me 5 other games that are 18 years old that have the following as Melee, maybe I'll be quiet. But there's a reason it's so rare. There's a reason it's the way it is right now. So yeah, retweet if you haven't moved on. Because I sure as hell haven't. And until Melee gives us a sequel, I think Melee and Ultimate can exist harmoniously in the same spot. And no, I'm not moving the fuck on.